Now we have an opportunity to hear from the MPSA, and I want to warmly welcome Faye Slater, who's here today representing the military. We've been holding public meetings like this since early on in my tenure as chairman, and they've evolved. We had them originally in our small conference room because so few people came. Then we had more, so we moved them here. Then we didn't have so many. Then we started broadcasting them. And usually they've been just reports among ourselves, but we thought it would be really useful to hear from some outside people. So we've asked Faye Slater to come and make a presentation about military mail. And lo and behold, we get a lot more public participation as well at the same time. So all of you who are here will also get the benefit of this new presentation. And as you may have noticed, Commissioner Todd was particularly interested in this presentation, and that's because, if you don't know it, he served as Chief of Staff to the Secretary of the Army before he came here. So he's personally very interested and very familiar with these issues. So I'd like to welcome Faye and ask her, Fate, actually. Is that Faye? Oh, I see. It was Faye, and then my staff assistant got it to you. It's just Faye. Welcome to the Commission. Thank you for your willingness to be here, and we are very interested in hearing what you have to say for us.
Great, thank you. To the Commission, to our distinguished visitors, and also to the participants that join us by webcast. My name is Faye Slater, the Deputy Director for Military Postal Service Agency. And if I could take a moment, because as Commissioner Langley said, no leader is great without the team that supports them. So at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity for my team to stand up that help me in this fight every day to provide mail services around the world. Thank you so much.
Okay.
On behalf of Colonel Jason T. Evans, the Executive Director of Military Postal Service Agency, and the men and women around the world that provide mail service every day, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come before the PRC to provide a strategic overview of the military mail network. And if I could take a moment and ask you to kind of think about in your mind, when it comes to mail, when you go home this evening, think about what you'll do when you go to the mailbox. And if you're anything like me, you'll go get your mail out of the mailbox, and you'll probably sort your mail over the recycle bin or the garbage can, and then keep the bills, or you'll take your mail and put it on the table and look at it later. However, think about mail from a military member's perspective. In the military, when it's mail call time, it's a significant emotional event. As we like to say, mail is morale. Whether it's a letter from home, or a package that you're expecting, or something that you ordered online. Mail for the military for many years has been a very important communication tool. And we also look at it as morale as well as a combat multiplier. So today what I'd like to do is kind of tell you a little bit about the headquarters, Military Postal Service Agency, otherwise known as MPSA, as well as the mail enterprise. It is our mission at MPSA and throughout the DoD mail enterprise to provide our military customers with an efficient and responsive mail network for both personal and official mail. And we do this in both peacetime and when we're at war. To accomplish this task, we work with a host of partners throughout both the federal and civilian sector. We are an extension of USPS, and our military post offices are classified as branch post offices of the USPS, and that is in accordance with law. A little bit about the enterprise. The DoD mail enterprise is comprised of two components. The first component is called the Military Postal Service Network. And what it does is primarily provides personal mail service to the service member who's at the tip of the spear. It is also used to provide personal mail service for our dependents, for our DoD civilians, and our contractors that are overseas. Also, the second component is the official mail network, which is utilized here in the U.S. as well as overseas, and it provides our day-to-day correspondence and business of the DoD network. As for the Military Postal Service network, the operation actually starts here in the United States. Our mail goes to USPS international gateways across 6 states, where our DoD personnel, military and civilian, are co-located with the USPS personnel. We operate over 550 postal facilities around the world aboard Navy ships, on land, and in some of the most austere, remote countries around the world. Mail for the military is transported overseas by contracted commercial carriers, as well as sea carriers, to the first point of entry. Then it is transported by either contracted or military assets by air, sea, and trucking segment to the last mile to the actual service member. The official mail network, which is the second component of the DoD mail enterprise, is operated both here in the U.S. and overseas at over 3,000 facilities at active duty installations, Reserve and National Guard facilities, as well as other Department of Defense off-site leased facilities. Some interesting facts and figures about the DoD mail enterprise. We service over 4 million service members, their dependents, civilians, and contractors located in over 108 countries around the world. During fiscal year 2011, we processed over 300 million pounds of mail, and we worked with over 61 commercial U.S. and foreign carriers to transport that mail to and from overseas. And we did that at a transportation cost of over $650 million. And 54% of that, the volume and cost, is for movement of mail to and from our locations in the war zone. And for USPS, DoD generated a total of $107 million in revenue in mail service. Some of our priorities and strategies to ensure the DoD mail network remains operationally efficient and responsive to our customer needs, we have established some very strategic level priorities. The first being to establish a strategic corporate board among our senior executives within DoD. Our general officers of the defense agencies, the combatant commands, and each of the services, they meet on an annual basis along with USPS senior executives to decide strategic objectives and priorities for the enterprise itself within DoD. As you know, fiscal budget cuts are hitting us hard within Department of Defense, so we're also looking at ways where we can optimize our manpowers and our facilities and still continue to provide excellent mail support. We're also focusing on uniform performance standards and metrics to ensure we're meeting our customer needs, and we're also being efficient at that process. Bottom line, what we're looking at with our priorities and strategies is how we can provide mail service to our men and women at the tip of the spear, faster, better, cheaper. In closing, I'd like to thank the men and women throughout USPS who make military mail call happen every single day around the world. I'd like to also take this opportunity, if you ever have a moment, the commission, the audience that's here today, if you have a moment, visit the Smithsonian Museum. We recently opened an exhibit that tells the story of the men and women who have provided mail service to our service members around the world, from the American Revolution to the current operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we do that every day with the help of the men and women at USPS. And so with that, I thank you for this opportunity and ask you that you continue to support our men and women around the world. Thank you.
I would just say thank you as well. I can't echo your comments any stronger than what you outlined today. And to you and your team, thank you to your service to our nation, and as well as I mentioned earlier to our postal workers here, thank you as well. You know, the Post Office and the Army, which is the Secretary of the Army is the executive agent for military mail, are both going to be 237 years old this year, and so they're really intertwined with the founding of our nation and the fabric of our nation. I did just have two questions. One from the perspective, certainly as you know, regulator here in the Postal Regulatory Commission. Our job is to ensure transparency, accountability of the Postal Service, ensure a vital and efficient universal mail system. And so to that regard, to what extent, if at all, can you describe the relationship with the Postal Service? Are there challenges working with them to get what you need done? Are there areas that may need some improvement in that relationship?
I will tell you, we have an excellent relationship with our partners over at LaFont Plaza. We meet with them on a regular basis. We speak with them on a regular basis. Within Department of Defense, I will tell you, one of our focus is to always look at how we can become more efficient in our operation. And so with that in mind, some of the most recent projects that we're focusing on really stems from things like undeliverable as addressed mail. And particularly that becomes important during the voting season. So one of the things that we're looking at for many years, I will tell you since the American Revolution, the way that the military has processed this undeliverable as addressed mail is manually. Well, that's very cost intensive for us, that's labor intensive. So what we're looking at is seeing how we can get the Department of Defense within USPS's National Change of Address System. And it becomes a win-win situation for both DOD and USPS because it cuts down on costs for both of us. So I will tell you the challenge right now is funding. We've been working with them on the systems, software, hardware to be able to provide that capability to the Department of Defense. But of course, with USPS being in the funding situation that it's in, it becomes a challenge for them to determine how can we get the monies to provide the systems update for that service. So that's one thing I will tell you that we're working closely with them on. Another thing is to modernize our retail networks. Again, if anybody remember the 386's computer ages, that's what we're still using in DOD in the retail network portion of our post offices. So again, that's something that we're looking at. We've been working with USPS to modernize, but again, funding becomes an issue. So those are the questions that are on the table. They are lockstep with us and wanting to revolutionize Department of Defense mail network, but funding is always an issue for them.
Thank you very much. One last question. In the Secretary of Defense's Defense Business Board, and recall about a year ago, it resurfaced again this idea that they looked at of, as they called it, privatizing some parts of the military postal service network. Can you just give a thumbnail update as to where that might be and how that's playing out, if at all?
Right now, it's crickets. And we'd like to keep it that way. However, we did share with the Defense Business Board that we have transitioned a lot of our operations within DoD network to the contracting world. For one, being the commercial network. All of that is completely contracted out. Also, we've contracted many of the manpower resources that's required to run our facilities here in the United States as well as overseas, particularly in the war zone. However, there are impediments to being able to completely outsource the entire network. Some things being, for example, status of forces agreements with host nation countries. They put a limit on the number of positions that you can actually outsource because they are looking at being able to have their members in that host nation country be a part of the employment network within DoD. Some other things, just the very nature of how the military deploys. The Marines, for example, they deploy on a moment's notice. So it's very hard to get a contract in place and get a contractor to even go to some of the places where the Marines would go at a moment's notice. So, I mean, we provided the Defense Business Board a response back to their request to outsource, but we've yet to hear any further communication.
In previous years, a couple of years ago, I think we had some participation by representatives of the MPSA with some concerns about how mail was being handled at the international sorting centers, and then some concern about how the election mail was being handled. But I think the opportunity that you had to bring those concerns to us helped the Postal Service to focus on those and for you to be able to work some of those out better. So I think even if we don't have a direct role in some of these issues, the fact that we provide some transparency and an opportunity for the public to explore concerns works to raise the issue so that the issue can be solved. And we are pleased that we were able to help in the past, and we're really honored that you came here today to explain this to us. I have just one question from my own personal experience serving in the State Department overseas. We have things called APOs, which I thought were Army post offices. But are they still run by the Army, the postal offices that serve the diplomatic corps around the world, the U.S. diplomatic corps?
Very great question. Just here last year, we signed, we being Department of Defense, Department of State, and USPS signed a tripartite agreement, because there is now a law in place that allows Department of State to establish what we now call DPOs, diplomatic post offices. And we are currently in the process of transitioning all of the APO, FPOs at embassies and consulates over to Department of State for operational management. So they will all now be called diplomatic post offices.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Chairman, I have just
Question? Yeah, sure.
a question, but to thank Ms. Slater for her presentation, but also to mention that the Postal Service, I believe, is the nation's largest employer of veterans. And in our audience, I'm sure there are individuals who have benefited from the timely and efficient delivery of mail and have a real understanding of the importance of MPSA in their lives when they were serving overseas, or if they had family or friends, loved ones overseas, knowing that their packages and letters were received properly. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the formal portion of our agenda, and we usually like to set aside 10 minutes or so for public comment. One of the things I like to do is have people who are representing interest groups stand up and just say that they're here, so we can recognize them. A lot of you come from one group, so maybe you, or two groups, maybe you can designate a couple of people to stand up for you, and then we have some professional postal representatives as well. So we'll begin.
I'm Deborah Spivey. I'm the area local president for the American Postal Union. We have a lot of APWU members here today, of course. Some of us are affected by the closings of the post offices and the proposals, and of course the newest list that came out where they have finally approved the majority of the closings that they wanted to do. Our concern is the information that you're receiving and that you're reviewing is not accurate, is misrepresented. We had public hearings, and then you saw the summary report in their AMP study report. It was unbelievably misrepresented as to what happened.
We can't really, in this forum, hear the arguments you have about the end case, we call it, the advisory opinion, in detail. But you can be assured that the APWU representatives are asking hundreds of questions and will get a fair review from us for the information that they present to us. And if you have more information or ideas, as I said, our website is available. You can look on our website for all of the information that's been filed. And if you think there's something missing or your own people didn't get right, you can always either work with them or add information to our public commenter file. So we welcome your participation here today, and assume that you'll be going to other places in Washington to let them know about your interests. Thank you.
I just had a question. So you mentioned something about that there were new rules that were set up again for the public to be able to submit more information to the Regulatory Commission, and I wanted to find out something that had happened on Monday.
Those are new rules to participate in appeals on individual post office closings.
Correct.
So if you're interested in that, they're now online, the new rules, and if you have questions, you can ask either the Consumer Affairs Office or our Public Representative's Office about
My question is to make sure that there was a time frame that we did have before, but with new rules coming into play, I thought maybe that was.
There will be new rules that will impact any future post office closing appeals.
Thank you.
My name is Carlton Cooper. I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, American Postal Workers Union President, Local 482. Some disturbing facts have come to us concerning the AMP studies, and this is across the board. The Postal Service is moving forward with their AMP studies. As a matter of fact, we had a labor management meeting yesterday to discuss job changes regardless of what the Postal Rate Regulatory Commission says to their mail delivery standards proposals. They are moving forward with color codes, a lot of different stuff behind the scenes, and with job postings, regardless of what y'all think. And I wanted to make that a public record.
Thank you for your comment. Sir?
My name is Chris Sauer, Vice President, Local Coordinator. My question is, what is the time frame that you will be getting an opinion from all the review of information? And at that point in time, I understand that the Postal Service is not required to provide your opinion. But exactly how much does your opinion hold for the Postal Service in regards to proceeding with some of these closures and consolidations that have major impact on the whole United States?
We hope to be complete our review by the end of the summer. We've listed a public calendar of the hearings that go through July, and part of it depends on whether the Postal Service will file what we call surrebuttal testimony. We are aware that no post office plants will close actually before sometime in August. And what we have found, even when our opinions are advisory, is that the public debate that is provided through the hearings we have, through the documents that are filed, through the questions that the Postal Service has to answer, provide an opportunity for the Postal Service itself to rethink some of its plans and to make adjustments depending on the information that surfaces during this due process that we have. I think all of us would like to have a system that perhaps is better coordinated between the final advice and the implementation, but we have what we have, and we believe that by making this process open and thorough, that we give the public an opportunity to have their voices heard and for the Postal Service to listen in one way or another. The report we make is advisory, and we provide it to the Postal Service, but it's also available to the public and to the Congress, and they often review the information that we have, and will take our advice in contemplating what they might want to do with regard to the post office and post office closings and plant closings. So we'll see just what happens, but our commitment is to try and complete this process as soon as we can within due process, and that will likely be by the end of the summer. We're going to get close on time here, so let me take two more questions.
Hey.
All right, these two gentlemen. You first this one, and then the gentleman who stood up.
My name is Rich Shelley. I'm Director of Organization with the Baltimore APWU Local. I just want to make the Commission aware of the following. The APWU President's Conference, NALC President's Conference, Postal Union locals across the country, and others, including myself and my local in Baltimore, have called for the resignation of Postmaster General Patrick R. Donahue, that we demand that he be replaced with a Postmaster General who will protect and preserve the Postal Service for the American people.
One more question.
clarification, did you say not one plant would close until August?
My understanding is that the Postal Service, in its announcement to give notice to employees, which is made on the 23rd of February, will, given the process that's required, result in them not closing those post offices, those plants, until sometime in August. Now, there may already be other plants in the process that are separate from that. But am I incorrect, Margaret? That's what I was
believe it's
told.
90 days.
But there are
Make
two
it
90-day processes.
I guess it's June 30th.
EPA, global.
Environmental assessment process.
Well, if you
You're
would
gonna
like
make
to
me just
provide
make
us
it
with
up?
some more specific information, I'm sure all of us here would be interested in having
Well, we're hearing
that.
supposed to start in September.
That's what they've been talking about. All the app studies are
But
wrong.
if you,
Who did? Oh, they
it's
should.
clear for I think all of us believe that this is a process in motion. And we see that with post office closings as well, and individual appeals that we've heard. And what we may or may not get on May 15th when the moratorium is lifted. The general information that I had was that the plants that were under specific review could not actually begin to be closed until sometime in August because of the process notifications that were necessary and employee relocation opportunities that were necessary. But if you have other information, I would, and my fellow commissioners, I'm sure, would be happy to review it and to take it under consideration. So, now, are there any people from the usual crowd who come to see us who'd like to?
I have one quick question, Chairman, just real quick. Does the Postal
Sir, I
Service,
can't do it.
just real quick, does the Postal Service have to wait for your opinion before they can relax or reduce the standards?
No,
Excellent
it's an
question.
advisory opinion.
So they don't have to wait for your opinion, they can relax the standards all in a row
Yes,
without waiting for your opinion?
yes.
Okay. It's a violation.
What about waiting for the
No
opinion
more
of the
questions,
American
please,
public?
sir. We're just not equipped for this kind of hearing
Interchange, I
with
Okay.
public participation at this
Just
level.
checking it out.
I appreciate your interest, but we really can't take everybody's question. We have
Can you speak to the relaxation
a
of delivery
closed session that
standards?
we have to go into with the people waiting for that. So just before we leave, are there any people from our usual postal community who are here who'd just like to mention that they're
Kelly,
here and part of our
Kelly, you're
hearing
part of it,
today?
come up there. Who else? Jody, get up there.
The only thought I had today was, it seems to me that some of the cases have been remanded back. I guess it's for further consideration by the Postal Service, and that still seems to be kind of an open-ended process that nobody really knows. So even if there's a remand, that's not really the end of the process.
No, they remand, but they can ultimately close the post office again. Bob, you don't want to say you're here?
Bob Raven, representing the National Legal Personnel.
Anyone else? Anyone in a suit and tie?
Nick Lewis with UPS.
Not going over well,
So say it again.
Guess you should have worn a suit and tie, Bill.
Okay. All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but before I do, I really do want to thank you for your interest and coming here. This was a great experience for us, and I hope it wasn't too frustrating for you. Please continue to participate in the process. This meeting is adjourned.